Yo, what's going on, Big Stepper? So you might be a new real estate investor, a new wholesaler, trying to figure out what market you should start in. We all heard the term start in your backyard, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to real estate investing. But is that always the case? Maybe you feel like your market is too saturated. Maybe you feel like your market is too rural. There's not enough opportunity in your market, right? So we're going to discuss the pros and cons of big markets versus small markets, okay? Now, personally, I do a lot of my business in what some would call a small market. It's really a B-size market. It's not a more so a C-size market, but we'll get a little bit into that. First, let's start with big markets. The biggest pro when it comes to big markets is ideally a lot of deals. So ideally there's a lot of opportunity in a big market as opposed to a rural or a really, really small area or a rural town market. There's not enough deals in those kind of markets. In big markets, there's ideally more deals, which is why a lot of people go after them. However, as I just mentioned, a lot of people go after them. So on the con side, there's ideally more saturation. Now, one thing I want to address is that no matter what market you're in, your mentality, your mindset really will contribute mostly to what you see as far as your results. If you believe that the market is just too saturated, then you'll just get that as your reality, meaning that you won't get any deals because you feel like there's just too many people in the market. That doesn't matter if you're in a big market or a small market, right? And also, no matter what market you're in, you have to have great data. And what I mean by data is the actual leads that you're calling, or whatever your marketing channel is, right? But the actual properties themselves have to be great, and then the means to get to them. So if you're cold calling, the numbers that you're dialing have to be great. If you're doing PPC, then your cost per lead has to be great, right? So all these different kind of things, you just want to make sure in general that when it comes to data across all markets, make sure you're putting yourself ahead of the competition by getting great data, right? All right, so getting back to the big markets, like I said, you got ideally more opportunity, but that breeds more competition ideally, right? Now, speaking from a little bit of personal experience in these bigger markets, I've been in Phoenix and also in Tampa. What I've noticed personally is that there's from a cold calling perspective, because that's what I do a lot of my business, right? Like 90% of my business, like 99% of my business, well, 95 is cold calling, right? So for me, calling in those markets, just not like the sellers were expecting it. So it's like even in a smaller market within, Cincinnati that I call in, it's like Southwest Ohio, Cincinnati, Dayton, all that kind of area. The sellers, you can get more people, but I can just say truthfully, man, when it comes to cold calling, the more time you put in, the better opportunity you have to be able to get a deal. But the sellers in smaller markets, in a more Midwestern market, they're more open to have a conversation with you versus the sellers that you may get. But it ultimately boils down to the data as well, guys. If you get a data that everybody accesses, then you're going to have a hard time getting deals no matter what market you're in, right? But that's when it comes to, how you're cold calling as well, or what systems and processes that you're using. Let's get back on topic. When it comes to the big market, another pro that you have is that when you get a deal, what I've witnessed, when you get a deal in these bigger markets, since there's so many people who want to get deals in these markets, if you have an actual deal in these markets, they sell quickly because there's so many people who want to get deals, right? And what this breeds, another pro, is that, well, I guess it's a con and a pro, but the sellers in these markets, since they know that so many people want to buy the properties in these markets, at least right now in this current time, speaking in 2025, right? In this current time, sellers understand that they really hold the bag when it comes to these big markets, meaning that they can get as close to market value as possible, even for a wholesale transaction. The buyers in these markets, they will buy deals that are listed on the MLS. Like the deal can be listed on the MLS. You probably get it $15,000, $20,000 below listing price. A buyer will buy it. That right there doesn't happen in B markets. Like you got to get the property like half a listing price. And even the fact that it's listed on the market is like a big stain within itself. In these bigger markets though, it doesn't matter. I've witnessed it personally in Florida and in Arizona. Buyers, they go crazy. Like they just want to deal in these markets, bro. It's actually crazy. But that being said, that's a huge opportunity when it comes to you as a wholesaler, right? when it comes to you as a wholesaler, it's breeded a whole different market as well, right? So there's always the middleman to middleman transaction. If you were familiar with the first video in this series or whatever, I'll link it up there. But basically, I explained to you how you can get started. And one way you can get started in real estate investing is, being a middleman, right? As a wholesaling transaction, you're already a middleman. But then you, as a person wanting to get started, you can become a middleman, meaning take the wholesaler's deal and take that deal and sell it off to your end buyer. That's more prominent in these bigger markets. It's as opposed to like a smaller market. A smaller market is not as prominent. But that being said, as a wholesaler, if you get directly to the seller and you get a great deal, man, you can sell that thing in 3 or 4 days. It's even same day, sight unseen. I've seen it. It's crazy. That doesn't happen as much. It just happened to me actually, like for the first time ever, after 5-6 years in a smaller market. But I've seen it and witnessed it in a bigger market, ASAP. It's crazy. All right. So when it comes to another con of these bigger markets, your sellers and your inspection periods, they can't be long, right? Inspection periods cannot be long. When I say long for a real estate investment transaction or wholesale transaction, a long inspection period is, anything over 15 days, but 30 days and anything over that is really long, right? Which is why different strategies work better in those smaller markets. And we'll get to that, right? But just to kind of, scare you on a little bit, but seller financing and also novation tactics can be a great tactic for you to use in smaller markets to get your deals sold, because they'll be more open to a longer inspection period. And also it may be a little bit harder for you to find a buyer. We'll go over that though. All right. So another pro, like I said, if it's an actual deal, then it gets sold. If it's not a deal, you have to work it, but you'll most likely find a buyer for it just because people want to invest in these bigger markets, all because of the name itself. People want to invest in Florida. People want to invest in places like Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada, right? So I'm only really speaking from markets that I have experience in. So I've had experience in Florida and your southwestern United States, being, Vegas or Nevada and Arizona. I don't have too much familiarity or experience when it comes to California or the Pacific Northwest and all that kind of stuff. I ain't got no experience up in there, but when it comes to the, Midwest and the other markets I just named, that's really my, expertise, right? So when it comes to those markets, in the bigger markets, the buyers want to buy. So even if you don't have a deal, you really can work it and possibly find one, but you're not going to get a long inspection period. That's a pro though, because if you have a good deal, you don't need to worry about a long inspection period, right? So, all right, that pretty much sums up big markets. That sums up big markets, pros and cons. Maybe there's something else I think about. We'll talk about at the end, right? Now, when it comes to smaller markets, and when I say A markets, I'm talking about, like I just named the cities, right? You know what I'm saying? The big cities in Florida, big cities in Texas, big cities in Arizona. Big cities. Now, when you talk about B markets, it's not so much that these markets are not in big cities. It's more so where the big cities are located. So we're talking about big Midwestern cities, right? So I just told you guys Cincinnati, Ohio. That's Cincinnati, Ohio, Southwestern Ohio. That's where I do about 90% of my business at, really over the last, years that I've been doing wholesaling. That being said, when it comes to other markets outside of that, Northern Kentucky is the same way, but bigger markets outside of that are still B markets is like Columbus, Detroit, Michigan, and a few places in, Philly, Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania. So these markets are like your B markets only because where they're located. Now, your C markets are going to be really small markets outside of even those markets, right? So like your suburbs of those areas, so like your in-between cities of, cities. And I'm not going to keep naming cities. I keep naming it from my personal experience, but I think y'all get the gist of it. Now, when it comes to Florida, or when it comes to your Texas and Arizonas, I want you to think about, like, when you think about Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio or Austin, whatever, those are A markets because those are where people are moving to, right? A lot of people are moving to these markets, but also the what connects those cities, like that triangle, in between that triangle, those would be B markets. So this is what I want you to think about as far as B markets, all right? So B markets, the biggest pro of your B market, again, guys, there's going to be competition no matter what you do, no matter where you do it at. No matter what industry you're in, there's competition, right? but you can win a little bit more with consistency because there's not as many big investors, you know what I'm saying, corporations that are trying to invest in these markets. And when I say invest in these markets, I'm talking about from a wholesale perspective. There's not so much of like an actual business like of wholesaling in these B markets. Whereas when you go to like a Tampa or a Miami or like Orlando and all these other markets, there's big companies where sellers know what wholesaling is and where buyers know what wholesaling is, and buyers are okay with that because they just want the deals. So like these other smaller markets, I'm not going to say sellers don't know what wholesaling is because they do, but it's just not as, it's just a whole different kind of feel, guys. And let me just explain to you what I mean, kind of. You can have a deal in these B markets in major cities where you can take 2 days to like think about if you want to get the deal or not. And then you come back 2 days later and it's like, all right, I'm gonna get the deal. And these like A markets, you can't take 2 days to think about if you want to get the deal or not, bro. It's like, get the deal, take 3 days or 4 days, however long your inspection will be, because it won't be longer than a week, most likely. And then try to get the deal sold. But in these B markets, you can take 2 days, think about it, because you got to figure out if it's worth your time, because that's another, I guess you can say, a con, is your time when it comes to getting these deals sold. In these B markets, you have to work to get these deals sold. The deals don't really sell themselves. So unless you have a really great deal. Now, when you first starting, this is what I mean, really. When you're first starting, no matter what market you're in, you have to build a network, right? But once you build that network, especially in a B market, like you become the source somewhat. Like you can get deals sold so quickly only because you got that network built. But when you're in a market, you'll probably go to somebody who's, you know, one of these big name companies who a lot of wholesalers or real estate investors know in the industry to get your deal sold because you're just trying to get the deal sold or whatever. It doesn't work like that. You got to do a lot of groundwork and guerrilla marketing or guerrilla tactics when it comes to getting your deal sold in these B markets. You have to sell it a little bit. Like what I mean by that is like in an A market, if you told a buyer about a deal and they like it, they'll go and see it the same night or like an hour later. Like, hey, let me go see it right now. Let me go see it. The same thing can happen once you build a network up, once you build a reputation up and people know like, hey, I better go see deals because he'll sell them. Once people know that about you in a B market, then people will move like that. But that doesn't happen until time. Like it has to be based off of you because they know you have a network. Other than that, this is how it'll go. You'll tell a buyer about a great deal in a B market and they'll be like, all right, well, I got work, man. I think I can see it on Saturday evening or Saturday afternoon. I'm working all week or like something crazy. Like it's just something where they like, it's not their main priority. Whereas in these A markets, again, it's their main priority. It's what they do. It's the whole different kind of feeling, right? All right, so when it comes to another pro of these B markets though, are that when your inspection periods can be longer. In general, your inspection period in a B market, you can leverage that you have a 15-day inspection period in a B market. I'll say it like that, right? You can leverage the fact that you as an investor have a 15-day inspection period because most, especially new investors, they're going to go for a 30-day inspection period. If they're not listening to the right people, they're going to try to get 30, 45-day inspection period, which, you know, a lot of sellers in these B markets will go for that because they're not really privy to the real estate industry like that. But that being said, if you coming in and you're offering 15 days, 10, 15 days, they're like, hey, I'm going with you. Like, it's just like a no-brainer, right? So you can have a longer inspection period that is a pro in your B markets. Now, another big, I guess you can say, pro in the B markets is you can leverage the fact how quickly you can close. In the A market, it's kind of expected for you to close fast. It's kind of like, it's kind of more so expected. I'll say that. In the B market, it's like, I'm closing this quickly. I'm not like, don't take this out of terms, guys, because it ain't that big of a difference. Like, it's still going to take work. It still take consistency no matter what market you're in. But I'm only giving you little things that I've noticed just based off me being in the markets long enough for me to be able to tell you a difference. But the reality is it takes work no matter what market that you're in, all right? Now, we want to stick on with B markets, but I want to tell you a little bit about C markets, all right? Now, C markets, again, are going to be your smaller, like, towns. Like, it'll be a city. It'll be a city, but then it'll be like a town or like a smaller area outside of these big cities, outside of your even subsidiary cities when it comes to your A markets, right? These are areas probably 50,000, 100,000, let's say 100,000 people. Like, it's a really small area with 50,000 people. My point is, I think you get it. It's a rural area, a rural town. When you're in these kind of areas, guys, the rules change completely. Basically, it'll take longer for great deals to sell because there's not many people, again, wanting to buy in those markets. When you go to a B market, and this is why we moved on, because I have to compare these two. When you go to a B market, buyers still want to buy in these markets. And oftentimes, a lot of people who are buying in A markets, they're looking at the return that they can get in a B market. And they're like, yo, what am I doing paying $300,000 for a house that's about to rent for $2,000 when I can pay $150,000 for a house that rents for, $2,000? It's just like, that's the difference in a return. And when people, depending on what you're in it for, you'll probably start buying more rentals in a B market. But you can do a lot of flips because equity gets built faster in these A markets, right? Equity gets built a lot faster in Miami versus in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's just what I mean by equity. It means how quickly the value of the property goes up. That's because the supply and demand mechanism, right? There's a lot of demand to live in those areas, not a lot of supply. The real estate doesn't increase. There's only less land over time, not more land over time, right? That being said, though, in your B markets, people still want to buy in these markets. In these C markets, you probably got to convince somebody to buy in that market. It's somebody who wants to live in that market. It's probably somebody who grew up in that area, and that's the area that they buy in. Like, it's just a whole different kind of mentality that's going to go in that area, right? And with those sellers, novations could work a lot. I'm not going to talk too much about novations. I'm not going to sit back and act like I don't want. I ain't never even did a novation before. I've been looking into it, and I've just been thinking about it because I understand, there's a lot of money that can be left on the table when you're only looking at wholesale real estate as the only exit strategy, right? All right, that's neither here nor there. Another video for another time. But anyway, man, so in general with B markets, I personally love B markets. I'm going to tell you why. No matter what market that you're in, this is what I love about wholesaling real estate, is as opposed to being a realtor, because let me just explain it to you. When you're in wholesaling real estate, bro, no matter what market you're in, you can sell a house for under $100,000 and still make $30,000. You can do a house under $100,000 and still make $30,000. You can sell a house in the A market and it'll be $200,000 house, $400,000 house, and your assignment fee will be $30,000. That's what I love about wholesaling real estate. Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't really matter how much the house is worth. What matters is the spread that you get. And, we can talk more about that, but that's just a different kind of mentality. And I became okay with that with myself. I'm like, yo, this is a spread that matters at the end of the day. But at the same time, there are reasons why I will be investing in A markets. Primarily, guys, the equity that gets built is a lot quicker. And what you do with that equity is completely up to you, right? Cash out, refi. All right, so when it comes to the ability for you to be able to make an imprint and for what market you should start in, ultimately what market you should start in, the ability for you to make a footprint and imprint. People say start in your backyard. I've given it a try personally, right? Places that I've lived outside of my hometown and outside of, where I live at and where I be, where I'm actually physically presently located and where my home market is and just a market that I'm very familiar with. When I started in my home market, full transparency. I started in my home market. Moving around to, A markets, it made me want to be in those markets. But there's different kind of techniques and there's different kind of things that you can tweak to be successful in those markets. But I'd recommend anybody to, just to get right to it. I ain't going to sauce it up no more. I'm going to get right to it. I recommend anybody getting started in wholesaling real estate. The market you should start in is the market you feel most comfortable in based off of what I just said, right? I know that might be a cliche answer. Nah. Check this out. Listen, though. The reason why I'm saying that is because there's different pros and cons that come with it. Do you feel like you can work to get a deal sold in a or in a B market? In a B market, first starting out, guys, I had like 8 deals under contract before I got a deal sold. It took me 9 months to get a deal sold. I'm not saying that in a market it's going to take any quicker, because I know people and it took them, that much time, if not longer. And I also know people, it took them like not even within a month, within a couple weeks, they got a wholesale deal, right? But the fact remains is that when it comes in these B markets, you can have a great deal, but you just don't have the right network. And there's not wholesale companies out there that everybody know about wholesaling. You're like, well, let me call this company because I know they're doing it. You can post in Facebook groups and all that, but the shark culture, when I say shark, I mean like people trying to take your deal. That culture is bigger in a B market, only because in these A markets, again, there's just people just understand the market. It's just different kind of, I ain't gonna say ethics, because the wholesale industry is not ethical, right? It's not ethical at all. But there's a different kind of understanding that comes with it, because people understand a little bit more about the business. And those B markets, there's a somewhat, depending on who you surround yourself with and depending on the people that's around, a limited mindset. There's a lot of people that just feel like there's not enough deals on the table. And in reality, there's a ton of deals, but the fact that they feel like that can lead them to doing things that just isn't, that's just a little shady. But that being said, it's like, you got to really recognize what you're up against. So what you'll be up against in a B market is that you might have a great deal. You might have a really great deal starting off. Like that was my case. I had great deals, and I only knew I had great deals because when I looked back after selling deals, and once I started doing it full time and my network started expanding, I started looking at those other deals like, bro, they sold it. Like people were selling it off. Some people that I sent it to, right? That's the no respect mechanism. Just starting the game, they're like, I don't want it. Next thing you know, they're selling it off. Or they're, involved in the deal. I had other deals where people that got it sold at the amount that I was marketing it at. Not to say that I sent it to them. I don't know if I sent it to them or not, but the bottom line is they got it sold at the amount that I was marketing it at. Like the fact I'm marketing it right there, and I couldn't get it sold only because of my network. Whereas if you're in an A market and you did all that work to get a deal, because that was my main focus. I'm like, I got to get a deal first, and then I can get it sold. The deal will sell itself. That was my mindset. The deal will sell itself. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. Whereas in an A market, when you get a deal and you like, bro, this is a deal. I know this is a deal. When you get one of those, that thing gonna sell itself, bro. Like it'll sell itself. And that's the biggest difference in A and B markets. You got to be comfortable with that, right? Because in that B market, I mean, it's just depending on what you're most comfortable with, depending on what you found success in. It's easy to find success where you found it at before. It really is. Sometimes we look too far from where we're already found it at. It's like you found success there. Go with the flow of what you're doing, right? So that being said, if you feel like the flow is being able to drive to the property and do all that, I guess it's worth mentioning that my business has been completely virtual for the last 4 years. My business has been completely virtual. Like, hiring people and having help, boots on the ground in Cincinnati has been the way that I've been able to do my business, and having great relationships with buyers to the point where I don't even have to worry about them going to the properties, right? Or if I, I'm getting reacquainted with the buyer. If I'm just introducing myself to a buyer, then I got my guys or my people, my team members out there to go and just make sure all the vibes is right with that person. So, I mean, that's how I wanted my business to be set up, though. I never pictured myself having foots on the ground. But at the same time, I understand that I have to make a replicable model. But that, I feel like if just another thing that can help you gauge it, if you're feeling like you really want to make wholesaling real estate a business, it can be really beneficial to you to have a virtual business, to start in a B market. If you're in an A market, start in somewhere where you don't have to physically be at the property, because it'll challenge you to be able to put people in place. It'll challenge you to be able to finesse the right way on the phone, because it's so easy to be like, okay, let me just get up and go. But I mean, it's 24 hours in a day. Is your time better spent being in somebody's face trying to convince them to sell you your property, or spent, talking to people and getting properties under contract within 2 calls? For me, that's the best way for me to do business, right? I get a contract in 2 calls. First call is the contact, get the information about the property, call back, make the offer. Right there, usually it gets accepted. If it doesn't, then it's a follow-up plan, right? So that being said, though, you got to figure out what's best for you. In these A markets, guys, there's going to be a different level of competition. Again, I'm a big abundance mindset kind of person. I believe that there's a deal. I can wake up tomorrow and, somebody call me back and that's a deal. You know what I'm saying? That's how I look at things. But at the same time, it's about What do you look at things? How do you look at things? Do you feel like there's too many people cold calling when it comes to these bigger markets? Do you feel like, is it uncomfortable that hedge funds and there's other big competition in these bigger markets? You got to carve out your niche and find your way no matter what market that you're in, guys. And that's the biggest thing you got to be most comfortable with, is grinding every day, day in and day out. In wholesaling real estate, it teaches you a lot about life, because even when you don't see results, you have to trust the process, knowing that each step that you're making, you're getting closer to your end destination, and your end destination being the final goal that you put forth in the beginning. Right? You have to have that wherewithal to get to where you said you were going to get to in the beginning, and that faith to know just because you don't see anything happening, it is happening. I mean, wholesaling real estate taught me a lot about life, but I had other things that taught me a lot about, other things as well, life as well. That being said, though, all right, and my biggest suggestion, man, just to cut right to it. I already said I cut right to it. I know I gave you the runaround. I would say starting a B market if you really are just wanting to create a virtual system and a virtual business. It'll encourage you to start systems and businesses, even no matter where you're at. I just say start in a B market. I don't know if you're in a B market, great. You're in your backyard. I'm just saying start in a B market. That's it. Because I think, once you go to that A market, just, try to build on it. Don't lose yourself in the A markets. That's what I almost did a couple of times. Lost myself in the A markets. You know what I'm saying? Meaning like being like, I'm done with this area because everything's going great, so I'm going to be done with it. Which is like, what's that? That don't even make sense when you think about it, right? Everything's going great, so I'm going to be done with that. So I've done that a couple of times. Like, everything's done, so I'm done with that. I'm moving on to this. Specifically, I did it with the changing markets, a couple of times, and other things as well. But changing markets, I've done that a couple of times where I'm like, everything's going great in Southwest Ohio. Let me move to this A market. Let me do this in this A market. Let me try to switch the system up. But it's like, bro, build upon what you have. So you can keep things going, but I would say keep things going to a degree that's not taken away from what you're doing. Only build on top of it. So still do the same amount of time. Still reach for the same metrics if you're going to reach for A markets. Just be careful in A markets, because I think A markets can be discouraging if you're a beginner wholesaler just starting off. Maybe you should join a company, join a business if you're in an A market, because these A markets, if you're by yourself, you can feel very discouraged because you're like, yo, is this working out? I got this, like everybody telling me to, go kick off, you know what I'm saying? F off. Like they telling me all type of stuff, right? They telling you all kind of horrible names, all because they're frustrated on being called. So it has you feeling like the system and the process and the wholesaling real estate doesn't work. But in reality, it does work. You probably just in the wrong market starting off, right? And I think that would encourage you to be more so of a solopreneur, more so in a solo position if you're starting in the B market, because you'll recognize like, okay, I can actually get a deal, and then encourage you to put a system in place to get more deals, which then leads you to be able to move on to a different market because you already got the system in place in that smaller market, okay? So that's my 2 cents, bro. Of course, I sprinkled a little bit of my personal self in there, a little bit of my personal history, but at the same time, faithfully, this helps you guys out. If you got any helpfulness at all from this, go ahead and consider hitting the like for the video and subscribing to the channel. And until next time, man, as always, you know what to do. Get the stepping, get this stepping, get this stepping. Hey.